I quit my life for 6 weeks. Hey Sassy fam, it's Miki and I am back today with an episode. It's just me. Kev is actually out sick and I figured since he did a solo episode that I would also do a solo episode. You may or may not know from my socials that I have actually been in Asia for 6 weeks now. I visited Singapore, Taiwan, Japan, and Korea in that order. And this was basically my gift from me to me. It's been something that I wanted to do since I was 19 years old. But basically, I wanted to travel when I was still young, able-bodied, and relatively financial savvy. Obviously, this trip has been 7 years in the planning, so I've had plenty of time to save, to budget, and to plan the itinerary, although a lot of that was done very last minute. So in this episode, I'm going to be covering exactly why I went on this trip, how much the trip cost, highlights from each country, 5 of the biggest lessons that I've learned, and how my life will change moving forward, because truly these last 6 weeks were very eye-opening, and I learned not only a lot about what I like, but also a lot about what I do not like and will not ever probably be doing moving forward. So starting off with why I went on this trip, like I mentioned before, since I was 19, it was something that I wanted to do. I was kind of inspired by the academic career where professors often get a sabbatical. And a sabbatical usually happens every 7 years or so. You get 1 year of rest, rejuvenation. You can go abroad, you can travel, you can pick up a new hobby. It's kind of up to you how you spend that time. In modern day, it has kind of been a little bit more trendy to do a 6-month sabbatical every 3.5 years. I think that's worked better in recent days. But regardless, taking time to recharge often leaves us with more energy, with more creativity. It helps us be better people when we have more perspective. And it also expedites our personal development. I also wanted to get out of my normal routine and the way that I have always been doing things. I moved to Seattle in 2020, and I'm not going to lie, compared to California, it's a very stark contrast where the winters, pretty much 9 months of the year, I would say it's pretty gloomy. There's very little sun. In the winter, the sun doesn't rise until 10 a.m., and it feels like it sets by 3 p.m., and what sun you do have is covered by a lot of clouds, so your circadian rhythm is kind of thrown off just because you're not getting that sunshine and rainbows and ponies and the whole shebang. Also, in the last year or so, I would say, I was waking up with this really weird, heavy feeling in my chest. It felt like a bubble of anxiety. Honestly, if there was any way I was going to be able to escape the Pacific Northwest for a little bit during the wintertime, I'm going to say yes. Now, I want to talk about the timing of this trip because it was very important. As many of you know, Kevin is a surgical resident. However, he is on a 1-year research year. This is built into his program. So research year is actually coming to a close this July, so we really don't have that much time left. This would be the last opportunity for him to travel without the typical limitations and stress and responsibilities that he has as a surgical resident. So there was really no better time. Second, a trip takes money and money needs to be saved. So this was a 6-week vacation for me, and different people met up with me at different parts of the trip. So for example, Kevin came with me to the Singapore and then the Japan portion of the trip. My family also came with me for part of it. I decided a long time ago that this was a trip that I wanted to fully fund for my parents. It's the first time in 26 years where I can be like, hey, mom and dad, I got you. Don't worry about it. Your daughter is doing good now. I often think about the hundreds of experiences, outings, activities that they have taken me on growing up. And I know this is a drop in the bucket in comparison for what they have done for me, but I think it's just the beginning and it is the start of being able to take care of them the way that they have taken care of me. And honestly, I feel really proud that as their daughter, I'm able to take care of them. Like, hey mom, I'm an adult now, I'm making real money. because I feel like often in their eyes, they still see you as the baby version. And in addition to that, I also decided to fully fund the trip for Kevin. I'm sure you guys all know this by now, but he is one of the kindest, sweetest, most patient souls. And honestly, I don't know if anyone else in the world can deal with me the way that he does. Kevin also spent a couple years of his childhood in Japan, and he left in first grade and hasn't been back since he was 7 years old. It has been his lifelong dream to make it back to his hometown and visit some of those same spots and just really enjoy Japan. And I didn't want him to miss out on any of the experiences, so I decided to fully fund the trip for him as well. The cherry on top is that it was also his birthday in April, so it turned out to be a pretty epic birthday gift, if I do say so myself. I know you guys must be curious how much it all costs, and thanks to modern day credit cards, I basically just had to add up 3 numbers from the 3 credit cards I used while I was traveling. That total came to $9,559.95. That is a lot of 9s and a lot of 5s. And then in addition to that, I did spend roughly $500 cash in Taiwan and Japan. So I'd say all in all, it totaled to about $10,000. This is inclusive of all flights, hotels, shopping, food, transportation, you name it. I'd actually initially budgeted $10K just for all the kind of trips and activities and excluding shopping, but thankfully it actually included everything. I think $10K is very reasonable considering that I also paid for my parents and Kevin. So I feel like if you divide it out, it's really not as bad as you think it is. And I also want to clarify that we stayed at pretty normal accommodations, I would say. Nothing crazy fancy and nothing crazy not fancy either. So we're really quite in the middle of the spectrum there. Next up, I want to give you some of the highlights from each country because truly they each have their own beauty and pain points. I hope that maybe you guys can use this to kind of figure out where you might want to visit next. So I started off in Singapore, and oh, Singapore, do I have such a big fat crush on you. Kevin and I first visited Singapore last October. If I'm being honest, the decision was kind of on a whim. Originally, Kevin wanted to go to Japan, but because the borders, nothing was really open back then, from the things that were open, we were like, hey, Singapore sounds great. And of course, we had watched Crazy Rich Asians, and we were very easily convinced. Singapore is kind of a dreamland for us because the majority of our audience is comprised of English-speaking Asians, and Singapore is literally a country full of English-speaking Asians. It feels really special to be able to walk around and see everybody look like you, think like you, and they speak the same language as you. Like, that's kind of incredible. And we knew that we had supporters, subscribers in Singapore, but we didn't realize just how many of you there were, nor did we realize how small Singapore was. So it was so much fun just walking along the streets and being able to run into you guys, say hello, take pictures. And I have to say, everyone in Singapore is so well-mannered and respectful, which is something that we deeply appreciate. Singapore is really small, which is a stark contrast from America, where everything is spread out super duper far and you can't get anywhere without a plane or a car. In Singapore, you can go from one side to the other. You run into people all the time, and the circles are very tight. So basically, everybody knows everybody, it feels like. Can I just say, Singapore, you guys have given me opportunities that I could have only ever dreamed of. I remember it being on my mood board last year that, oh, it'd be really cool if one day I could travel internationally for work. If somebody wanted to invite me to come speak, I don't know what occasion it would be, but I'd love to travel internationally for work. And Singapore, you guys made that happen. I had the pleasure of speaking at the Icon conference and also working with Marina Bay Sands, Pan Pacific, some of these incredible hotel lines. And I often need to take a step back and I think, Miki Rai, you are literally just a normal person. I am one of the most normal people on earth. Why did I get chosen for these opportunities? And I remember that it's because of you, because of people like you guys listening, that I'm able to live the life that I live. And for that, I am eternally grateful. And I cannot say enough thank yous. So thank you for trusting in me and for supporting me and Kevin, because it really does mean a lot to us. And what are the things that we love in Singapore? Kaya Toast, coffee, Boogie Street, high tea at TWG. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. It would take me 10 years to list it all, but I want to name some of the highlights of things that were on my lifelong bucket list. This is things I want to do before I die, and I crossed 2 of these off in Singapore. Number 1, I wanted to go clubbing at Marquee at least once before I died, and girl, do we make that happen. My friend Sonia Chu, she is a very famous radio DJ host, celebrity in Singapore, and she's also an incredible party animal. So I had the best of the best take us to Marquee. They were so kind to host us. We got a cute little table area. It's my understanding, again, this is the first time I've ever clubbed in my life, so I don't know how it normally works, but it's my understanding that normally you don't have a table, so you just kind of have to stand around the whole night. And they put my name up on the like electric banner that went by multiple times, so that was really cool. There was bottle service, Pikachu dancing. There's a lot of really cool things going on. And my curfew for myself is usually around 9 or 10 p.m. And this party did not start until 1 a.m. Around 1 a.m. it started to warm up a little bit. And then I think 2 a.m. is when we really got into it. And a lot of these people party until 7 a.m. But by 3 or 4-ish, Kevin were like, okay, I think we need to go home and rest. I also took my very first shot at Marquee. I'd never taken a shot in my life. Can you believe that? I went to UCLA. I went to a party school. The reason that I do not drink alcohol is because I don't really like the flavor. I don't like the taste of it. I have very sensitive taste buds and also very particular sense of smell, which make me have an aversion towards alcohol. But you know what? They brought the shots out and I was like, okay, this is probably the only time in my life I'm going to do it anyway. So I took it and we got it on video, which is pretty epic, I think. So thank you to everyone in Singapore and thank you, Marquee, for a great time. I don't know if that I'll be regularly partying, but if Kygo or someone cool goes back there, I definitely would do it again. The second thing on my lifelong bucket list was to run around Marina Bay Sands. I got epically sick the second week I was in Singapore, but I was still actually able to cross this one off. I can't say that it was a full run, but it was like a light jog, fast walk situation. I did it at night when the beautiful light show was going on in front of Marina Bay Sands, and it was still 85 degrees out, so it was very hot. But it's one of the most beautiful loops I think you could ever run. And because it was so hot, I got some ice cream from the uncle who's always there on that corner. The thing about being in Asia is that they're actually used to dealing with Asian skin, Asian hair, Asian features, and that's not something I'm used to finding in the US. Normally I have to like go out of my way on Yelp to really dig and find somebody who understands the texture of Asian hair, how to balayage my hair, you know, hey, my eyebrows, I don't want them as curved because that doesn't look as flattering by Asian standards. And in Asia, everyone's Asian, so they get it. And that's always so mind-blowing to me, but that's why I always get my beauty things done in Asia. So in Singapore, I got my eyebrows microbladed. I got them microbladed last year, but I did get them touched up, and I cannot explain to you enough how much time it has saved me because now I don't need to fill them in every morning and you wake up looking beautiful, which is amazing. I went to this place called Dr. Lash. They are truly the best of the best. They are so good at what they do. I don't even worry, especially with something like eyebrows, which is semi-permanent. You want to make sure you go to a good place because you're going to be stuck with those for a while. Skincare, I got my skin lasered for the very first time. It's been something I've been wanting to try for a long time, but truly just didn't know what to get or where to go. And my friend Fiona, who is actually the founder of Youthforia, an Asian-founded makeup brand here in the US, actually told me to go to Cheongdam Skin in Singapore, and that's where I went. And oh my God, I cannot tell you, the results were insane. I had these weird freckles on my face, some spots from basically not wearing enough SPF, and all of them fell off my face after this laser. I don't know how long it'll last. I'm sure they will come back eventually, but so far so good. And then hair, I always get my hair done in Singapore now. John, who many refer to as a hair god in Singapore, we did an ashy brown balayage with some gray undertones. I wanted it to be a bit more ashy than usual, and that's exactly what I got. It looks so freaking good. I don't think I'll be touching my hair anytime soon. And lastly, I want to talk about the work ethic in Singapore. Like, I don't know how nobody in Singapore ever sleeps, period. Because if you message somebody on WhatsApp at 3 a.m., they will be responding to you. 8 a.m., response immediately. 11 p.m., blue check marks, they read the message. I'm really impressed by how quickly things move in Singapore. Like, you guys can plan a whole 1,000-person event in one day because everybody moves so fast. And because the country is small, I feel like you can get around and do things more quickly and more easily. But if you're from Singapore, I just want to make sure that you are taking care of yourself and sleeping well, eating well, make sure you eat breakfast. Life is short, but life is also very long. So make sure you're putting yourself first. All right, next up, we went to Taiwan. So my parents are Taiwanese. I am Taiwanese by blood. And although I have never lived in Taiwan, I have to say that every time I go back, it feels like home. In my opinion, Taiwan is one of the most underrated places you can visit. Not a ton of people know about it, but anybody who's ever gone raves about it like crazy. And I'm going to tell you why. Because if you've ever been to the US and you've ever been to Hawaii, then you know the stark contrast between somebody like the vibes in Hawaii versus mainland US. Taiwan is kind of like the Hawaii equivalent. Taiwan is small, it's surrounded by a lot of water, and because it's small, it's got islandy vibes, and everyone is very, very friendly. Like, Taiwan's the kind of place where you'll be on the streets looking for directions and somebody will voluntarily come and try to help you find directions. For me, Taiwan feels so special because I'm surrounded by a bunch of people who speak the same kind of Mandarin I do, and I just think it's so cute. This was the first time that I did a bit more of a road trippy vibe to Taiwan, not with a car, by train, but, road trip vibes where I was visiting the southern parts of Taiwan for the first time. I went to Kaohsiung, which the southern part was definitely far more laid back in comparison to the busy city life in Taipei, which was kind of nice. However, I do think my heart is always and always will be in Taipei. One of my favorite places to visit in Taiwan is Jiufen, which famously looks very much like the scenes in Spirited Away, especially when it's dark or rainy. It's giving 10 out of 10 exact carbon copy. It is a very cute little cultural town. There is so much good food, street food, souvenir shops, local vendors, and everything is at a very affordable price, which is the best part of it all. Taipei itself has the MRT, which is such a reliable transportation system, and it's incredibly clean. There are English signs everywhere. So even if you don't speak Mandarin, you wouldn't be confused or lost. I mean, maybe a little bit lost, but nothing too crazy. You'll definitely be able to find your way around. It also conveniently goes all the way to the airport. Some of my favorite things that you absolutely must eat if you're ever in Taiwan is 卤肉饭, which is braised pork over rice. My favorite one is in Ximending. It's quite popular, so if you go there, I'm sure you'll see the long line and make sure you wait in it because it's really good. I also love lajin, which is oyster pancakes. If you've ever had like a Korean seafood pancake, it's like that, but a bit of a softer version, so it's less crispy. And then you also have oysters in it, which I know can sound kind of like a weird combo, but it is truly the best. And they have the sauce on top that just chef's kiss. And finally, ji dan gao. This is basically like a tiny cake, a tiny castella cake that comes in all sorts of different shapes, sizes. Every vendor will have their own little machine. I've shared this on TikTok and Instagram, so I'm sure you guys are sick and tired of hearing this story, but I was so confused why this thing was called ji dan gao, because my whole life I thought it was ji dan gao, and ji means chicken, dan gao means cake, so it was like, oh, it's called chicken cake. There's no chicken in it. It's literally just a cake. But some things in Mandarin just don't make sense, so I didn't question it. This time, I posted about it, and somebody slid in my DMs and was like, ma'am, it's ji dan gao. And when you change where the space goes, so ji dan actually means egg, and gao means cake, so it's actually egg cake, which makes so much more sense. My mind was absolutely blown to bits. But yeah, that's what happens when you don't, when you're an American-born, I'm not even American-born, I'm Japanese-born Taiwanese. I'm a JBT-LIA. JBT-LIA, Japanese-born Taiwanese living in America. When people ask me what I am, I'm like, do you want the full story or just the easy answer that I'm technically American? Anyways, Taiwan is always a good time and time flies. And if you are traveling on a budget, I cannot recommend Taiwan enough because everything is so affordable. All right, moving on to Japan. I feel like everyone and their mother is in Japan right now. So the places that we visited this time included Osaka, Kyoto. I never know whether to say these with like my actual accent in the language that they came from or just say them the American way so people know what I'm saying. Osaka, Kyoto, Koyasan, Yokohama, and Tokyo. The first three are part of the Kansai region. Yokohama and Tokyo are relatively close to each other as well. We did have the JR pass, so we were able to kind of go in between without having to spend too much money. If I'm being honest, this is going to be an unpopular opinion, I think, but I am a Kansai region girly. Like, I think if I were to go back again, Osaka, Kyoto is probably... and Nara are probably my favorite places to be, partly because I'm a huge foodie and I feel like the food in Osaka is so good and it's a little bit more affordable than it is in Tokyo and also kind of easier to navigate because it's not as crazy in terms of the train lines and everything. To give you a big overview, Osaka is the food capital of Japan, so lots of good food, street food, restaurant food, everything food. Nara is where you have all the cute little deer that you see, people bowing. They also have some good eats and stuff too. There's some hidden gems, so make sure you check them out. They also have good warabi mochi, which is like a summer version of mochi, often topped with kinako, which is a soybean powder. Kyoto is the matcha heaven, matcha capital. So there's a lot of really beautiful cultural things that are over there, including the Kinkakuji Golden Temple and beautiful kind of sightseeing. The one thing that you absolutely have to eat is Rikuro's cheesecake. So this is a cheesecake shop in Osaka. They also have it at the station at Shin Osaka. But the actual shop is in Osaka, which is one station over from Shin Osaka. This is the fluffiest, jiggliest cheesecake you will ever get. And it's not a New York style. It's a Japanese style. So it's souffle. Don't expect it to be like thick because it's like a jiggly version. And you guys know I eat cheesecake. I review cheesecake on a daily basis. And I can easily say this is the best cheesecake that you're going to want to have on a daily basis. Like I could eat this every day. A light consistency, but still beautifully flavored with that cheese that's sunken in. I ended up getting this cheesecake 3 days in a row and it's a full-size cheesecake, you guys. Like for $6 you get a, I want to say it's maybe like 8 inches in diameter, maybe 6 or 8 inches, but it's a full cheesecake. And I'm going to tell you why you do not need food recs in Japan, because there is no such thing as bad food in Japan. You're going to get all these places that are like, oh, you need a reservation like weeks in advance, months in advance. You're going to get friends that sent you all these long lists. Like, yes, if you're that big of a foodie, you can go down that route. But I can tell you right now that I have not ever eaten anything that did not taste good in Japan. And here's why. In Japan, they usually, if they're selling ramen, they sell ramen. If they're selling tonkatsu, they're selling tonkatsu. They only sell the one thing that they sell, and they sell it really dang well. Like, they get really good at their craft. So no matter where you're going, it's really not going to be a miss, because if it doesn't taste good, the business wouldn't survive. You'll see a lot of chain stores, or you'll see on Google reviews that some stores just don't have good ratings. But in my honest opinion, I found that none of them have really been accurate. And if you read the reviews, it'll be like, this is the best tonkatsu I've ever had. 3 stars. So I would say just take the reviews with a grain of salt. There are 2 chains in particular that I love a lot. One of them is called Matsuya. This is for Japanese style hamburgers. This is Hamburg steak. This is not an American steak. It's kind of like, it's glazed in teriyaki, I think, and it's a soft steak. But if you've never tried it, you have to go. And it's literally, I think, $5. I think it's Katsuya was the other one, but it's a tonkatsu chain. And for $5, you can get my favorite oyakodon of all time. So egg over tonkatsu. We did have the pleasure of working with the tourism board in Japan. We worked with the Wakayama tourism board, which is the first time I've been able to work with a tourism board in Asia. Felt really cool, really special. And because we went to Koyasan, which is in the mountains, we actually were able to catch the last bit of cherry blossoms despite kind of being late in the season. It was so beautiful. We stayed in a temple for the first time, and it was a very epic experience. I will say we did do this intense I thought it was going to be a guided meditation. So we went to the meditation, we showed up. The entire explanation is in Japanese. And while I can understand Japanese, I'm definitely he's speaking real fast. So I'm not picking up on a lot of the things he's saying. I kid you not, this meditation, we sat there in silence for 45 minutes. And never have I ever felt so many aches and pains in my body all the time. So that was probably the funniest experience in all of Japan. This was also the first time I took my parents and treated them to a little 5-star hotel experience. We had the pleasure of working with Andaz Tokyo, and I pitched it to them. I was like, I would love to bring my parents here and make some content out of it. My mom actually started tearing up a little bit because they've sacrificed so much of their life for my future. And my mom still doesn't speak fluent English, so I can only imagine how painful it must be for her to be in a country where her best friends are not here, the language is tough, the culture is different, people act so differently, probably the same way that I feel when I'm in Japan, but even to a more extreme extent. It just felt really special being able to treat my parents to something that I knew that they would never treat for themselves, not because they can't, but because I know that they are frugal and would rather save that money for me or for some bigger, better purpose, quote unquote. Now, Tokyo was a lot of fun. I did Tokyo with my family, with Kevin, with my friend. But Tokyo is really dang busy, and I don't know if I'd ever seen Tokyo this busy before. I think because it was the end of cherry blossom season and there were so many tourists, I can only imagine for the local businesses how overwhelming it must feel and how frustrating it must be when people come and they only speak English and they feel entitled to only speak English and you're trying to communicate and it's just not easy. So I feel like I definitely did feel a little bit of that stress from the businesses that I don't feel like I've ever really felt before. I will say 99% of the times in Japan, the customer service is absolutely stellar. People are so kind, so nice, so respectful. You're getting the full bow. It's out of this world. I will say you will definitely run into situations if you are a foreigner where there are some places that just do not accept foreigners, certain bars, certain restaurants, some places that'll kind of separate you out within a restaurant. If you are a foreigner actually trying to live in Japan, they often also do not accept you because the whole point of Japanese culture is to fit in. You want to fit in. They want a homogenous society. You want to be similar to other people. They don't necessarily celebrate standing out the way that we do in America. A lot of the times when foreigners go there and they aren't understanding of that expectation, they can definitely be kind of outcasted. So if you're going to Japan, I want to give you a couple of tips and some things that you may not expect before you go. Number 1, the taxi cab doors open on their own. Do not touch these doors. The taxi cab will give you like a little snarl if you do not follow their rules. There are little signs that say don't touch the door, but they open automatically and close automatically. Pretty cool. Number 2, you must bring cash. Despite being a pretty advanced society, Japan is not completely cashless yet. There are a lot of things that are cash only, so you definitely want to exchange some currency before you go or at the airport. Number 3, you cannot walk and eat in Japan. This is not socially acceptable. The reason being, there's a lot of odors, you can make a mess, but Japan is a very respectful society. You're often thinking about the other people around you more so than you are about yourself. You'll literally go to a food court and buy food and there's nowhere to eat. And where do you eat? You need to take this food all the way back to your hotel or to a park or somewhere where it's socially acceptable to eat. You need to sit down and then you can eat. You'll often see foreigners breaking this rule, and in places where there are more tourists, it's definitely a little bit more loose. The only exception to this is sometimes street food. Even when you eat street food, you'll often find that the vendors have a little area where you can stand and eat, a tiny bar, or even like a seating area in the back, because again, it's not socially acceptable to walk and eat. And number 4, there are very few trash cans in Japan. Sometimes you will find them in the stations. That's usually your best bet, but I would definitely bring like a little plastic bag or something to bring with you, because you will have trash that you'll need to keep on you all the way until you get back to your hotel at the end of the day. The normal thing that you can do, let's say you went to a bakery and you ate something from there and you had trash. In theory, you can return that trash back to them. And I would say generally they'll take your trash back there, but there are certainly instances where you will literally return the trash to the same vendor who gave it to you and they won't accept it back. So just be prepared in that scenario. Finally, we have Korea. I don't know that I would have gone to Korea without my incredible friend Katrina, who has been there multiple times and so kindly planned the entirety of the trip, because honestly, I wouldn't know where to go, what to do, nor do I speak the language. This is the first time I've ever traveled internationally with a girlfriend. A lot of you guys slid in the DMs and asked like, oh my God, did you guys fight? How did you know you guys were compatible to travel? And we did go on a smaller trip last year. We did Hawaii together. So it wasn't our first run vacationing with somebody, and I definitely wouldn't test that out on an international trip. We knew we were compatible in terms of like, how long does it take us to get ready? How many things do we want to do in a day? We're basically on the same wavelength all the time, and we have the same interests. Like, we want to take cute videos, we want to take cute pictures, we want to eat good food, but then we also want to relax. I would say the biggest highlights of Korea were Latte World, where you put on school uniforms and it's a cute little amusement park. I did a color analysis there. We did hanboks, and overall, I would just say Korea is really great value. Compared to Japan, I would say it's a little bit more affordable, but also less foreigner friendly. With regards to Korea is less so built for tourism. There are more places where you might not find English signs or English menus, things like that, though everyone is very nice in trying to help you navigate. My favorite activity in all of Korea was definitely the color analysis, because I truly just didn't know if I was wearing the right colors or doing the right makeup, and it turns out I have been doing my makeup wrong my entire life. There's going to be a whole YouTube video on the color analysis, so I'll save it for that. But just know I'm working on it, and I'm updating the closet, updating the makeup, and I will give you guys all the tips and things so that you guys can do it at home too, even if you can't go to Korea. And finally, I want to tell you the biggest lessons I learned from 6 weeks, because maybe you can learn from my lessons even without going on your own sabbatical. Number one is that your time is yours. Don't let anyone take that away from you. Someone taught me that when you say no to something, you are saying no to just one thing. But when you say yes to something, you are saying no to every other thing that you could actually be doing in that same time. Let that sink in. Isn't that scary? So saying yes is actually not something to be ultra proud of all the time. Time has been sparse in these 6 weeks because I'm traveling, I'm going places, I'm doing things that I want to do. Be honest with yourself. Don't hang out with the people you don't want to see. Do the things that you want to do. It's your life. Make it what you want to be. You have the power to choose. Number 2, pack light, live light. I know that this sounds so darn simple. Started the trip with a massive check-in luggage, the biggest one that I think fits like the regulations or whatever. I'm not gonna lie, I am one of the worst packers ever. I hate packing. I hate pre-planning my outfits. So I always end up packing a lot of things that I don't need. And I on this trip, I packed a lot of things I didn't need and underpacked the things that I should have brought. And here are the biggest lessons that I've compiled for you on how to pack. Number 1, go to Daiso or go to Amazon and buy a light version of the skincare makeup containers that you have to carry. For example, I have the Tatcha Dewy Cream, and I brought that thing, and the container alone I feel like is a whole pound, and all of those added up to being like a solid 10 pounds I feel like of extra weight that I was just carrying around. You can easily go to Daiso and just get like a plastic thing. Number 2, buy travel size items. It is worth it. Every inch of space counts, especially if you're going to be doing shopping, if you're going to be gone for a long time. You just really don't want to be carrying big stuff with you anyways. Number 3, be honest with yourself. If you don't even wear that outfit at home, don't pack it with you on a vacation because you're not going to wear it. If it's not comfortable, don't pack it. There were so many things where I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to take a picture in this. Like, no, I'm not going to choose to wear that when it's literally so itchy and I have to stand out in the heat all day. And then finally, let's be real, you're going to shop. So pack like you're going to shop. You know you're going to go and buy clothes there. Pack a few less shirts. If you know that you're going to buy electronics, make sure that you save extra space for that. and bring a duffel if you need to. Living out of a suitcase has also brought perspective into my life, especially as a creator and somebody who I feel like gets sent a lot of stuff that I definitely appreciate, but certainly don't need all of it. I am a little bit of a hoarder. I keep a lot of stuff that I probably don't need. I also have scarcity mindset, so I end up just not unboxing anything or using anything, and it's so beautiful I don't want to open it. I lived out of a suitcase for 6 weeks, and clearly I'm still here. Clearly I'm still fine in one piece. So all of this other stuff that was sitting at my house, I can't even name the things that I didn't have. So do I really need them? I will definitely be doing a big purge of my life, because I feel like when you have a clean space, you have a clean mind. And right now I don't have that. Number 3, I actually don't need a lot to be happy. I suspected this before, but I've really confirmed it now. All I need is good food and good people. To boil it down, that's it. And when I eat good food with the people that I care about, we are working so hard every single day for chasing all these crazy goals that we all have in the modern day century. I am enough as I am today, and one day I'll be able to eat good food with good people every day, and that's what matters. Number 4, it's okay to be stagnant. I know I have shared this lesson with you guys, but it was reiterated to me on this trip because, I was going through a lot of different weather changes, climate changes. It was hot, it was cold. Seeing things bloom in nature really reminded me that in the same way that in nature, nothing blooms all 4 seasons, we cannot expect ourselves to bloom all 4 seasons. And unlike in nature, our seasons may not come in order. You may have summer and then you may have winter. Your winter might last 6 months, might be 3 years. Giving yourself the grace and the patience to know that whatever season it is, it will pass, whether it's the good or the bad. Like taking everything with a grain of salt, I think is so, so important. And not expecting yourself to always be in a season of growth, because that's unrealistic, that's toxic. I feel like it actually stunts your growth to think that way, because you're putting way too much pressure on yourself. And number 5, taking care of others is an incredible privilege. I'm often being taken care of by the people around me, mostly by my family and by Kevin. And this time I was able to, give back to them on this trip by planning things, paying for things, spending time with them, telling them that I love them. And it feels incredibly good to give. It's so easy to be selfish, especially in this capitalistic society where there's so much emphasis on materialistic things. I should be having this, I should be having that. But really, what actually brings so much joy is being able to give and uplift the people around you that you care about. Even if it's just calling your mom or your dad. When's the last time you called your parents? The small things that you do really add up to make such a big difference. And finally, I want to close with how my life will change moving forward after these 6 weeks. I don't think I will ever be gone for this long ever again, because I'm going to be honest, I'm an introvert in a homebody, and roughly around the 3-week mark, I was really ready to go home and to see my dog. Don't get me wrong, I had such a fun time every single day of this trip, but it's very exhausting traveling every day, figuring out where you're going, and just not having the ability to sleep in your own bed. But this was the first time in my life that I felt like I was forced to get off my hamster wheel. I literally did not have access to the hamster wheel. I didn't have time to do the hamster wheel activities that I normally do. I know it may not seem this way, but my mind works 24/7. The entire 6 weeks, I never put my camera down. Everything is filmed just in case. What if one day I need the footage? My brain cannot stop. For 6 weeks, I did it for the first 3 weeks, but then I got wildly sick. So for the last 3 weeks, I did not edit at all on this trip. My editors did some editing, bless their souls. For the first time, I wasn't able to do the normal crazy work routine that I did. Would you believe it or not? I actually stopped waking up with that crazy, weird, anxiety, heavy feeling in my chest. It actually went away. So I learned that it is actually possible not to feel like that when I wake up in the mornings. And maybe all of that was a lot of self-induced pressure and not allowing myself to rest when I really did need to rest. So I'll definitely be scheduling breaks, consciously taking time away from not only the space that I live in, but also from creating like taking a vacation purely just to take a vacation without filming it. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. If you have any thoughts, any feedback, I would love if you slid in the DMs of Scrubs and Soy Sauce or even into my account, Miki Rye. I'd love to chat with you guys. If you've ever taken a sabbatical, if you're considering taking a sabbatical, I'm in the phase of my life where I'm slowly learning that maybe it's okay not to be the number one, best, most wonderful, incredible human being, but maybe it's just enough to be me. If you're watching this on YouTube, please give this a thumbs up. And if you're watching on Spotify, Apple, or something else, please give us 5 stars. It truly means the world to us, and we read every single review that comes in. And I will see you guys next week. Bye, Sassy fam.